they're going to try to enlist me as their chairman of their new venture. We're going to use Patrick's deal. And I'm going to relate to you just as a real guy would relate to you. You talked to Kim. Kim said that Mr. Pena's got some time. We're sitting in the library. I've got 15, 20 minutes. Then I'm going to have to go up and change for dinner, which is very typical of what would happen. And all I've seen is that you're going to explain to me Patrick's business, and because I know generally what you do, it'll be just like I read your summary, and you're here, and I say thank you. Hi, I'm Dan Pena. Nice to meet you. How can I help you, young man?
Sir, we're here to talk to you about the position of chairman of the board of our growing company. As you know and have read, we do have our relocation company in Switzerland. It's 1.5 million gross a year. There's two main building blocks, which is relocation and the ancillary business of self-storage. And we are in the process of growing it. We have grown very successfully over the last 5 years internally. And now we want to take the next step and go into external growth by acquisition. And for that, as you can see, we're young. We don't have your track record, basically. So we're searching for professionals to support us, so we can use their track record and also their name in the process of getting the financing for this external growth, and also, of course, your opinion and your inputs, because you have more experience than we may get in the next.
Well, I've read your executive summary, and if I wasn't generically interested, I wouldn't be making the time. So, in that regard, you already have one leg up. And so, the concern I always have when I read something like that is, and I look at the two principles. You are young, and most young people make mistakes, and I understand that people like me would, with my experience, would keep you from making not further mistakes, because we make mistakes together, but no big mistakes, and I appreciate that. But these are some of the things that I'd be interested in. Who else would you consider to be your financial partner, i.e. your accounting firm, your legal partner, i.e. your lawyers? Who else would you use my name to get those two? And what about other directors? I would assume, and assumption is the mother of all screw-ups, but I would assume that because you're Swiss-based, and I like Switzerland, so that's another reason that we're talking, that we would find other directors that were at least part-time in Switzerland. And if so, do you have anybody in mind? Would I know them? I'd like to Google to see, make sure that there's no inherent conflicts. And speaking of conflicts, currently, as I understand your model, I don't see that I have a conflict. I might have a conflict with somebody that you might decide to ask, using my name as a lever, to join the board, so that's why I'd be interested. I also might have a conflict if, perchance, I'm in a litigation with one of the law firms that you might be interested in, and or the accounting firm. So, for starters, let's see if we can get to that information.
Of course, sir. Well, for the financial partner, we have our finances done by KPMG. We got them last audited in 2010. And since we've been growing, but we haven't audited them ever since. As for our legal partners, as you teach yourself, it's always good to deal with the big players. So we have Baker McKenzie Zurich as our legal partner. They have cloud all over the planet. Okay. For the other directors we are considering, and we have been talking about this for a long time, one of the directors, and we would try to your name to get him, is Klaus Kühne, basically the founder of Kühne & Lager. It's the biggest transportation company all over Europe. I'm certain that his input and knowledge of the logistics business as well would be valuable for this venture. And also there is Gerd Furrer, probably wouldn't know this. Velti Furrer is the biggest relocation company in Switzerland, and it's been owned by the family for over 150 years. And Gerd Furrer is kind of like the fallen prince, basically, of the whole empire. So he has a very strong emotional drive to basically show the clan that he can do it without them in the same industry. So we would get him in basically to give him the possibility to have revenge as well as work with us and help us. That's the two people we are considering for directors on the board as well.
Well, it's interesting. The former managing partner, Baker McKenzie, who's currently the CEO of the IMF, is a good friend of mine. She took over, I guess, in the last 4, 5, 6 months. But Baker McKenzie is a fine firm, and KPMG I have no problem with. I've used them in the past, and obviously Baker McKenzie I have no problem. Although I'm familiar with one of the names that you presented to me for potential board members. I don't know either gentleman, but just based on what you've said, I'm sure they sound qualified. Would the guy that is the fallen prince of the relocation business have a conflict vis-a-vis, does he have any non-competes, or since he got, I won't say thrown out, but since he's not associated with the family business anymore, does he have any non-competes? Are there any restrictions?
As far as our research showed, no, there aren't any, because he has been working in the family business for about 10 years. And at some point, because there are 4 brothers right now, they had to make decisions who would stay and who would leave, and they had a bit of an internal family conflict, and he was put out like basically on hold. So he still gets money every year, but he doesn't work for the company anymore for more than 3 years, I think. Do we should I think so, yes.
And how did you two guys get together? I mean, we have a Romanian, and we have my Google search is correct, and we have a Austrian who now is lives in Switzerland. How is it that you two young men hooked up?
Well, we met because Patrick also had an internet marketing side of the business. So before I joined the team, I helped build a company from 0 to 10 million in revenue in 18 months.
That's impressive.
It's a small start, but we're hoping for a lot more than this.
Very good, very good. So obviously internet marketing would have a lot to do, I'm assuming again, and I don't want to overstep my bounds, but I'm assuming that it would have a lot to do in the potential growth of the new company. Or not the new company, but the extension of the company.
Certainly.
And not just internet marketing, but marketing in general. This is where my background is,
Mm-hmm.
and this is where I'm bringing my value to the table.
Well, it sounds interesting. If I could add value, I would be interested. What is what is your timeline or time frame that you're looking at? This is now May of 2012. What are you looking for in the short-term and intermediate-term basis for the growth of the company?
Well, starting as soon as possible, because the market is good for this endeavor. We would start by at least 2 acquisitions in Switzerland, if they prove to be as valuable as we think. And from there, we would then start to look at deals all over Europe to basically form this company, which target goal is 100 million at least in revenue. So we have some real...
100 million Swiss francs?
Euros.
Euros, okay.
So we have some real meat to sell basically in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So the exit strategy will be in 5 and at latest 7 years to sell the whole business to a big investor. Also like to have your input first of all if that's a real good goal. For example, an institutional investor, if they would be interested in a deal of that size. And then of course when we should start conversation and with whom we should start speaking.
Well, in addition to a potential investor, I would, this is early days, but I would also seriously consider somebody in the industry, not just an investor, but somebody in the industry that could bolt on in an ancillary, complementary, supplementary manner somehow the business. because you're going to have to explain less to somebody that's already in the business as opposed to an outside investor who doesn't necessarily understand the business. You don't have to go through all those hurdles. What you want to do is you want to try to, in any business that I get involved in, I want to try to eliminate as much of the, many of the potential no's as possible. And somebody that's already been successful in the business, somebody who's already raised money, spent money, invested money in the business will be an easier sell. Not easy, but an easier sell. And probably give you a higher multiple because he will look at the benefits that the company brings to them that he doesn't have to start from scratch. Because as I've said, if you've read any of the materials that I've written, it's easier to buy revenue than it is to grow it inherently. And I think that would be something you guys should consider.
Well, actually, the biggest chain of self-storages, which is the second part of the business, in the German-speaking area, it was founded by a group of Austrian entrepreneurs about 15 years ago. And they sold it to a big real estate investment trust about 5 years ago. So those gentlemen are in the late 50s and are also, again, out on their own basically. So I thought maybe we could get one of them interested. They have all the experience from what happened this business.
What kind of time commitment would you be looking for me to put forth? I'm only interested in non-executive positions. I don't want to be an operations officer anymore or an executive position. So what kind of time commitment would you be requiring or expecting of me?
Well, there are, I think, 4 board meetings a year.
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're looking at 4 important meetings a year with the board. And so that would be
Probably 8 days a year with travel.
yes. Of course, we're covering all expenses and everything.
And then again, of course, it would be ideal for every, because every big decision comes before the board it goes through, obviously. But still to have some kind of emergency way to contact you in case, like, I won't say in a bad way, but the shit hits the fan. So we have a way to get to you in case we have a real emergency, for example. So we don't have
Well, I'm always available by email and my various homes around the world. My assistants always know how to get a hold of me. One of the requirements, and I'm sure you've already thought this through, I'm probably not just speaking for myself, but I'm speaking for other potential board members, is that we would want to see financial material in the minutes so we can approve it, a few days before the board meeting. I'm not necessarily a proponent of following Robertson's rules of etiquette for every board meeting, especially for a company this size. But as far as the information and data, I'm sure the other potential directors would like the same. What do you have in mind? Assuming I can add value, and I'd only be interested if I could add value. What can I expect for myself in terms of remuneration or compensation going down the road?
Of course. We also have been discussing, because I don't want to say it will be a lot of money and then it doesn't happen, but if we can make those numbers happen that we have been already discussing, we would be able to offer you an option in 2% of the share, the total share, and we're expecting to sell the whole concept, the whole company 5 to 7 years down the road for 100 million, either by IPO or to a private investor or trust. And so you would get 2% of that deal.
Well, my normal carry is 10 to 25% as chairman. 10% if I'm not going to be involved in the operations other than in the reviewing mode. 25% if I'm going to be involved in the operations in more than just a reviewing mode, where I'm going to be guiding you, mentoring you, coaching you, whatever the words you want to use. And I would assume, not speaking for the other potential board members that you haven't contacted yet, that they'll be wanting, again, depending on their level of activity, between 2 and 5%. if the other guys are in Switzerland near you and you're going to be bouncing off ideas periodically, it's going to be closer to the 5% as opposed to the 2%. But it's early days. I mean, I just wanted to tell you what my normal parameters are. What I'd like to do now is do some further study on the market environment. I'd like to talk to the KPMG engagement partner. I'd like to talk to the McKinsey partner, engagement partner. I plan on, in the next few weeks, actually to be in Switzerland. I appreciate you coming here and accommodating me, coming to my home. Prior to me coming to Switzerland, I will have done my own homework. We can get together and I can give you a final decision.
Okay, good, sir.
Okay, anything else?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for coming by. Thank you. That's how it is. Okay, that was 15 minutes on the button. And that shouldn't take anything. And that's a real world deal.
That was very good.
Yeah.
So if they told you they had accounting and legal,
They better have it.
lined up, but
Yeah.
it's not your quality or your level of
Well,
expertise.
Baker McKenzie KPMG, it's almost assuredly high enough quality. If they go on me Rufus and Doofus and Co. and John Smith and his brother, then I'll be suspect. But he said audited financials by KPMG. I mean, the KPMG with Siemens auditors for about 400 million years. So I'm very familiar with the KPMG guys. And Baker McKenzie I'm very familiar with. And this former managing partner of Baker McKenzie is the current head of IMF. That's not bullshit. So that I would be comfortable with that. So I would contact them, and I would ask the engagement partners, is there any problems I don't know, or etc. I would ask them to send me a copy of their audit. I would ask the lawyers, not them. I'd ask, are they involved in any litigation or pre-litigation, or is there anything, I don't know. They would have to give permission to the accountants and the lawyers to give me that information. And then I would Google these other two guys, and I might make a suggestion or two in addition to those guys. And then when I went to Switzerland in a few weeks, I would sit down with them, and I would tell them yes or no. I would probably sit down with them whether I said no or yes, because that's the way these guys do it.
Feedback,
Yeah, and I would. Yes.
I saw there was a huge gap between the equity they offered, like 2%, and you wanted like 10 to 20%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my book, I say what I do in the book, and actually, I don't do 10%. I do 25%. But if I wasn't going to be involved in having to mentor them and wipe their nose and shit like that, I might do it for 10%. But invariably, what happens is they say, we don't want you to wipe our nose. We can wipe our own ass. But that's not how it is.
But
So the first time the shit hits the fan, Patrick's on the phone to me, and he says, can I come and see you? I said, what is it? Well, we got our cock in the custard, as they say in public school here, and I need you to help me. Okay? Or they got a problem with one of the other board members who's pissed off at him, and he's going to walk out the door, and can you save us? And so invariably, it's going to be, but for sure I don't do anything for 2%, and I never have done for 2%. The other directors will most probably agree for 2%. Now the finance guy, who will probably be your interim finance director, will deserve 5% because he's going to be going to meetings with you, etc., etc. I'm not going to be going to meetings with him. Yes, sure.
Yeah, but if the equity size is going to come up for discussion, when in the kind of negotiation?
Well, the Brits don't ask about equity up front. Okay, I asked because we're on YouTube, but I asked but normally it doesn't come up the first meeting. Okay, but I asked because I wanted it out. But the Brits don't ask; they just, can I add value? And 95% of the British directors will be happy with 2%. because they never got anything before. Now, see, I didn't ask you about money for meetings, because normally when you go on a board, you get so much money for every meeting you attend, etc. But when you're a startup, it shouldn't be the case, you know, because you don't have the money to do that. Even though you're not a startup, you're close enough to a startup that you can't be giving every director, you know, 5,000 pounds to attend a meeting. I mean, or even 1,000 pounds to attend a meeting for that matter. But the normal rate for a non-executive director in this country is probably 65,000 pounds plus meetings and expenses. So it's 100 grand. And so you can't afford that when you're just starting out. Now, some companies have that money. Yes, Marcus?
Should we always start with 2% to start?
Yeah, because they're not going to say,
Or is it the
you know,
shame?
they're not gypsies. They're not going to tell you, oh, well, if you offer 2, I can get 6. I mean, that's not the way it works. I mean, now you got to remember, these guys are consummate professionals. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking them. Okay, they're not there to haggle like a used car salesman. Okay, their reputations to them are worth more than that. So if you say 2%, and they'll also say, well, what are you giving? You know, they might ask, well, if that's what all the non-exec directors are getting, that's fine. And then you say, well, no, the chairman's getting 10, and they won't have a problem with that. They just won't. Because one of the things that I normally do when I do take over as chairman is I tell the other directors, we have a meeting, and I say, guys, if the shit, without the principals in the room, if the shit hits the fan, I'll take the heat. And that's all they want to hear. Especially the Brits. I'll take the heat. Just like the Japanese partners and the other people I have alluded to over the last 4 or 5 days, I'll take the heat. You know, I'm used to taking the heat. A lot of the other directors from the EU aren't used to taking the heat because lawsuits aren't so prevalent in European directorships as they are in the United States. And I read those statistics to you a couple of days ago. They're not as prevalent, so they're not used to. When I told the 4-star general, the German guy, that I take the heat, he said, the heat for what? You know, we're not going into a firefight, General. I mean, I'll take the heat because in case we get sued. And then he looked at the German guy who got him there. Sued for what? Because, you know, the German guy, the 4-star general, the guy that was the deputy commander of NATO, he had never been on a board outside the army, and he didn't perceive that he was at, what do I get sued for? You know, for the claims that the German kid might make that the directors are responsible for. You know, I didn't ask them about officers and directors insurance either, because I know that they probably couldn't afford it. Now, some of the questions I didn't ask, some of the other guys might ask. And then the answer to that question is, well, at this juncture, you know, we've decided with Mr. Pena, because he's already on board, that we really can't afford officers and directors insurance, but as soon as we can, we'll look into it. And so then the fact that you've addressed it and you've decided that you can't afford it at first, that'll make everybody comfortable. The fact that you say, what do you mean officers and directors insurance? And so some of these things, and that's what the chairman, whoever the chairman is, that's what the chairman should be doing. And so that's why he deserves a lot more than 2%. Because he's shielding the other guys from a lot of stuff, and if the chairman says that he'll take the heat, you know, then the other directors will feel more comfortable. Now, that's assuming the chairman has been in the eye of the tiger and actually taken the heat, and somebody put a blowtorch on his ass before. If somebody says that he's got no fucking experience, oh, I'll take the heat, you know, and then, well, he's never been in the heat. So, but in my particular case, I mean, all you got to do is Google anything, and you'll see that I've had somebody torching me before, and so I know what to do and I know how to handle it. But this is, you know, this is reminiscent how it should go. And I wouldn't have said, you know, when I said, well, that's impressive, it's 10 million, and then a typical salesman marketing guy, he says, oh, it's just a startup. Well, 10 million to most of these directors for a young company is going to be a lot of money. So I would say yes, thank you. I just say thank you. You know, don't do it out of the gypsy bullshit. But anyway, you did well. Patrick did well. I mean, he sounds like you don't sound Austrian, you sound Swiss now. And that's a compliment. Because the Swiss are smooth. They're very, very smooth. And that's why everybody's putting their money up there, you know, in Switzerland. Because there's a reason why they put the money there. They're not putting it in Bucharest, are they? No. Yeah. Oh, well, Sip puts the money. Sip would put the money in Bucharest rather than Zurich.
In Zurich, I don't put it right now.
Oh, you don't put it right now, but maybe someday you will put it there.
Actually, UBS is asking me to put it.
Oh, UBS. Well, let's call the chairman of UBS and let's see if he knows your name. Okay?
Maybe he knows yours now.
Well, he does know mine, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Just like I know the head of the IMF, you know. But that's why I'm here. Okay? That's why I'm here. Okay. Any questions on what we've covered here? It was a good job. We'll do some more tomorrow. We're about 3 slides before we go through the exit out of a company. We'll save that for tomorrow. And then the pre-conclusion, conclusion. But we're going to do a couple more role plays tomorrow. But they did a good job, so give them a hand. And who's my first appointment? Okay, let's go.